It was a bit of a commotion. So I came out and just to see what was happening, and sort of came around and saw Zoe was on the floor. Now, to me, it looked like she was, and I think I was told that you had epilepsy at the time. And I've dealt with epilepsy before quite a lot. So I wasn't overly concerned. In fact, I thought, to be fair, she's going to have a fit. It couldn't be a better place. On a soft floor, there's nothing sharp or dangerous around her. So it's okay. So I got a few of the ladies were panicking a bit because obviously they'd never seen one. So we got those girls off the mats, and Zoe's best friend was there, and she wanted to sort of stay. So I said, that's fine, but there's nothing to panic about. She'll have the fit, she'll come out of it, and it'll all be fine, basically. So don't panic. I said, well, the main thing we've got to do is just make sure that she's breathing. That's the main thing that we've got to do, and then eventually she'll come out of the fit. I think my sister at the time had phoned an ambulance. I didn't know what was going on, to be fair, behind me, but they'd phoned an ambulance, and that turned out to be a very, very good thing to have done. And then we noticed Zoe sort of turn over and put her sort of head into the mat. And at that point, we thought, well, we've got to protect the airways and keep them open. So we kind of, as best we could, because obviously she was resisting where she was quite tense. We managed to sort of turn her head and keep her airways open, basically, and able to breathe. And then it was about 10 seconds later when I was on my knees sort of next to her, and I was sort of monitoring the breathing, and about 10 seconds later, the call was made that she'd stopped breathing. The rest of it, a lot of it's been kind of played back to me. I think the next thing apparently I said was, who else is a qualified first aider? And another girl came forward at the time. I said, right, we've got to start CPR, let's go. And I think from the moment Zoe had stopped breathing to I started CPR was less than 10 seconds. For me, I'll go through a lot of my takeaways from it, because I just think it's quite handy to know, in the situation. For me, the hardest decision, and it felt like it took hours making it, but it must have only taken a second or two, was, is it the right time to start CPR? Yeah. Because I thought maybe I'm being an idiot. Maybe she's just got a weak pulse, or maybe she's just got real shallow breathing. And I could do more damage than good starting CPR. But to me, it felt like a 10-minute decision, but it must have been about a second decision. And then CPR was started within literally less than 10 seconds after. And yeah, we then continued that. We called for the defib. Again, on reflection, I would have called for it a lot earlier. But it had been a few years since I'd done my defib course, and I'd forgotten. Again, my biggest worry was putting the defib on, it's shocking her, and she didn't need it. What I'd forgotten is it tells you what to do. It tells you whether to do CPR. It tells you to stand back while it analyses, and it tells you when it needs to shock. And I had forgotten all that. But anyway, I called for the defib. They brought it over. Myself and another member continued the CPR. And at that point, I thought, I haven't got time to sort the defib out. Again, on reflection, I don't need to sort everything out. There was other people there that could have helped. That did help, but again, in my head, I was in charge, and I had to take care of everything. Anyway, so we continued CPR. Someone else we have a church opposite and a nursery group, and I think one of the two of the ladies had gone over there to get help. And a guy came over with again, this is all quite vague. All I knew was what I was doing and the person next to me was doing. That was all I wasn't worried about an ambulance, to be fair, at the time, but someone else had called them. Someone else came over with defib, and then he said, do you want me to take over, like the CPR? Which point I said, are you, again, I turned around and said, are you more qualified than I am? And he said, well, I'm just the first aid. I said, so am I, so I'm going to carry on. He then got the defib sorted, and as he was taking the defib out, the first set of paramedics turned up. And then they took over the defib side of it. We continued doing CPR basically until they took over that side of it. And then there were other sort of duties, but other things that we were assisting the paramedics with. And then what felt like days, but I think it was about 15 minutes, maybe sort of 20 minutes after it occurred at 10:13, and about 10:33, maybe a bit later, but around that sort of time, after the defib had shocked Zoe twice, CPR continued. We now had 4 paramedics and 2 other people in the room. About 20 minutes after everything started, we got the words which I'll always remember, which is, "We've got a pulse." And yeah, I'll never forget that. And then Zoe continued to make a recovery, well, from there, and then off she went to the hospital.
Wow. I mean, it doesn't half sum up the importance of first aid, CPR, and obviously access to a defib. I mean, defib was on site, or where was the defib?
So yes, yeah, sorry. We've got one on site, literally, it's just there. That's the one that I called for initially, and that was one that brought over to me, and I thought, I haven't got time to set that one up. At the same time, I said at the same time, a few moments later, 2-3 minutes later, someone from across the road had heard what's happened and had grabbed their defib. So we must have 2 within 50 metres of each other. Had grabbed their defib and brought it over, and that's the one that was initially open. So we did actually, we had 2 defibs ready to go, but our defib was literally being opened as another guy came in.
And what's your recollection of any of this, Zoe? Is there anything at all, or?
Not really, no. I just remember doing a burpee, and then being in the hospital, and then being told what had happened.
So tell us your situation now then. I mean, what exactly had happened to you then? Was it a cardiac arrest, and how are you now and everything else?
I had a cardiac arrest. I'm doing really well. I'm quite a positive person, so I will just carry on. I've had an ICD fitted. So,
right.
I've had to happen again, which I hope it doesn't. I've got that. And just taking it steady, just trying to get myself back to where I was, but slowly.
I think clearly you were in the right place. You were in the right gym, if you like. I mean, because this is the campaign that we're involved in now, to get defibs in gyms, but also to get everyone to understand the importance of CPR. Now, obviously, coaches will have their first aid training, but you know, I mean, I've done it, but I can't remember anything. So I think it's about refreshing all the time, isn't it? It's so important, because if Dave hadn't been there, or if someone just not switched on, you're not here today, are you?
No, it's massively important, and I think you're right to refresh it, just to keep that knowledge all the time. Really.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, from your point of view, Dave, I'm sure that was obviously, it was a scary thing in hindsight, but again, I bet it's made you ultra keen now to just be on top of all of that again, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Believe it or not, my first aid I think expires next month, but I'm on my top up next week. So I was almost at the end of the 3-year point. And I think, to me, I learnt on what I'd learned in the forces, because for 7-8 years in the forces, we did first aid a lot. I mean, we did it yearly, but we also did it on exercise, and it was just literally thrown at us weekly. And so much so that it was, I guess, almost all it was apparently like second nature. So as soon as something did occur, rather than run away, I ran towards it, and I picked up on everything I remembered, I think, from like the military days. So I think doing a course every 3 years, personally, I don't think it's enough. I know that's the minimum requirement needed, but you're trying to remember something 2.5 years ago. Something as important as that, I would like to see them maybe, or aspects of the first aid courses, refreshed yearly, ideally.
Yeah. And for yourself, Zoe, when can you, or will you go back training? I mean, you probably not want to avoid the burpees. Everyone does anyway, don't they? Everyone wants to avoid them.
Yeah. No, I will get back eventually. I'm having to do a physical within the hospital, just to see where my heart rate can and can't go safely. So until I've had that, I'm just taking it easy.